CEO of Chesapeake Capital, joining us this morning to take a look at some of the existing trends and talk about some of the themes associated with them. Jerry, this number here very much in line with what we've been talking about so far this morning. Inflationary pressure is easing, and while Fed Chair Jerome Powell's not confident that from 7 to 2.7 we're there yet, he said it's still too high. We're definitely getting some progress.
Well, I think the market has something to say about that. They want to be optimistic, and it's good news on the inflation front. For sure, it's going to help the bonds and the stocks to rally. But I think what we've seen also is that once we got down to these lows in the bonds, there was some buying that wanted to come in and to try to buy the lows once again. It's a reoccurring theme. Once we get it to the highs in the bond market, they're selling. Once we get to the lows, people want to lock in those rates.
You think some of that is some insurance type buying as we have stocks at these all-time highs, investors a little bit on the edge of their seats and expressing some jitters?
Yes, and I think people love locking in these rates. I mean, I think the 5 number really makes them feel good, especially now for the first time in a while we've seen some progress on inflation. We're getting makes that 5 look even better.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about as the Powell testimony yesterday, the announcement. Jerry, as a technical trader, how much does that actually influence your trading? I mean, I imagine you're sitting and watching, right, to get that kind of fundamental story, the narrative there. But are you changing any of your strategies based on the comments yesterday, or are you looking at this kind of from that more longer term?
Oh, much longer term, looking at the price action itself. Sitting there, I'm happy with my long stocks and not so happy with my short bonds and interest rates. So the bonds are definitely still in a downtrend. These rallies are welcome, but not quite enough to even go flat, much less go long yet. I do think it's kind of interesting to see nothing really happening on the good side in the metals, like you were talking earlier about gold, silver, and copper. So that's kind of interesting to see those markets kind of doing their own thing and not being very happy, especially today.
Well, but Jerry, you've talked about that in the past. I mean, that's part of the trend following system, right? You have these leapers, you have these creepers, and you have some losers in there as well, right? But average all out, ultimately, and again, the idea being that you have positive expectancy over the year, over the whatever the time frame that you're looking at, that longer term time frame that you're looking at, that cross section.
That's right. Exactly. It's a long-term game, and these markets have their own personalities and their own way of dealing with the facts. I love the diversification, but I liked it more when everything was going up. So now that we've seen the metals sell off a bit, and I see the diversification I'm getting with my stocks, but it's always more fun to have all the positions working.
I agree with that. These markets do have their own personality, which is important. Why it speaks to the importance of getting to know price activity in these individual products, right? Just because you've understood some of the nuances associated with crude does not necessarily mean that you're going to see how, as Jerry put it, S&Ps deal with some of the facts, right? It could be different ultimately, and I think that's important, very important. Also, Jerry, kind of along those lines, you mentioned some of the stocks. We've been talking about the characteristics, the themes associated with this rally, some of these big names. I know one that we've talked about quite a bit that you've been following, Eli Lilly. I mean, another impressive week here.
It's incredible. I went through the list of stocks yesterday and looked at all the charts, and these trends are just amazing. They're so strong, and they're just, it looks like they can't be stopped. And I'm pretty optimistic on the stock trends, but I don't want to get too optimistic. And I'm obviously the way I feel, and you can't help but feel good about some of these trades and these trends. But ultimately, we've just got to follow the rules and follow the trends.
Okay, so these trends are staggering in many ways, but that kind of makes me think about, again, something we've talked about before, right? Let the market continue on the path that it is. Don't get in your own way, because we as traders tend to kind of think, oh, this trend's going to end, or we tend to think that they're going to take these profits away from us rather than embrace risk and kind of let the profits run here. But the idea being here, again, that this market can run a lot further than any of us think is possible. But again, to hold on for that longer haul gain, you're going to have to open yourself up to a little bit of a pullback, right? You're susceptible to that bigger pullback, but that's part of, again, as tying back to our earlier point, participating in that longer term trend up.
It's so hard to do. You're psychologically, you want to take those profits and feel good about yourself. The smallest profit, just a $1 profit, is just all you need to really feel so much better about yourself and your decisions. Well, you see it in other markets recently, in the cocoa and the orange juice, where you had these big trends, volatility picked up, big, huge sell-offs, only to see the markets go right back to the highs or near the highs. So this is how you make the big money, and this is what your rules need to look like. Allow the rules not to be so close and so eager to get out, and so you can participate in these long-term trends.
Which is what we talk about, distance ourselves from that tick for tick type trading, right? Establish some of those bigger picture areas where if the market pulls back below them, the trade's invalidated. You just get out based on the system, right? But a pullback, necessarily extreme one, does not invalidate a longer term trend. Oftentimes it is possibly just a longer term buying opportunity to get involved. Another stock, real quick, NVIDIA. I mean, I'm sure this is one of the names you've been watching, which has just been a leaper to say the least as well, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. And I read an article recently, a few weeks ago, about how a lot of the big hedge funds had exited NVIDIA, and they were talking about all the money that they had left on the table. So once again, common sense or fundamentals and feelings are your enemy, and a good systematic approach, even from a retail person who has a good systematic trend following approach with a stop that's not too close to the market, can outperform the big guys sometimes.
Jerry, I always think about the non-trenders of today being the trenders of tomorrow. The dollar's been relatively range-bound and contained, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the Japanese yen. This has been, again, one of those trends where I feel like you think it's not going to continue. We're right back to levels where we saw the BOJ intervene. I mean, this is one that has been a well-defined trajectory to the downside.
Right, $60 billion wasted. We've seen this happen many, many times over the years. It's almost just for internal consumption, probably. No one really thinks they can affect these markets in this way. And it's a good sign, too, for the trend follower. You kind of want some fundamentals to be negative, and then all of a sudden see the trend continue. So that's really a good sign for the yen shorts, like the trend followers, to don't bemoan the fact that we have some volatility and some reason for it to go against the trend momentarily, because it's likely that trend will continue.
I love that. I think what happens is off those lows, you see a little bit of short covering ultimately, but not necessarily initiative type buying, right? So the news sparks a little bit of buying ultimately, but not that longer term, long haul type buying. So it just reverts back lower, possibly ending up to be just another short opportunity for those trend followers. Jerry, appreciate you joining us here.